everyone, and welcome back to Super English Talks. My name is Sara, and I am so happy you are here with me today. This episode is going to be very special because we are going to focus on something that every English learner needs but sometimes struggles with: listening practice and improving public speaking. You might think those are two different skills, but actually they are deeply connected. If you can listen well, you can speak well. If you can hear clearly, you can communicate clearly. And today, we are going to explore how listening and speaking work together and how you can train both skills at the same time. So, let's begin with listening. Why is listening so important? Because listening is the foundation of language learning. Imagine a baby. Before that baby says their first word, what are they doing? They are listening. They hear sounds. They hear voices. They hear rhythm. And slowly, their brain builds patterns. Then, when they try to speak, they are using what they have already heard. As English learners, we are not babies, but the process is very similar. The more you listen, the more your brain absorbs the rhythm of English, the pronunciation, the vocabulary, the grammar, the expressions, and the natural flow of conversation. Listening feeds your speaking. Listening makes speaking possible. But here is the problem. Many learners focus too much on speaking and not enough on listening. They think, I want to talk. I want to express myself, which is wonderful. But they forget that speaking without listening is like trying to play music without ever hearing a song. You need input before you can produce output. You need to fill your brain with good English sounds before your mouth can create them. That is why listening practice is so powerful. It is not passive, it is active. Every time you listen carefully, you are training your brain, your ears, and even your mouth. Because your mouth will naturally copy the patterns you hear. Now, how does this connect to public speaking? You might think, Sara, listening and public speaking are very different. But here's the secret. A good public speaker is first a good listener. Think about it when you speak to an audience. You are not just giving a speech. You are having a conversation with many people at once. You need to listen to their reactions, to their energy, to their silence. You need to notice if they are interested or bored, confused or excited. Public speaking is not only about talking, it's about connecting. And connection begins with listening. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are giving a short presentation in English. You are nervous, but you remember to breathe deeply and start speaking. After the first sentence, you notice the audience is looking at you, waiting for more. You pause. You listen to the silence. That pause gives power to your words. Then, you continue. You see someone nodding. That is listening. You are listening with your eyes. Later, someone smiles and you feel encouraged. That is listening with your emotions. So, even though you are the one speaking, you are also listening constantly. This balance of speaking and listening makes public speaking not only effective, but also enjoyable. Now, let's talk about how to practice. If you are at the B1 or B2 level of English, you are already capable of understanding many conversations, podcasts, and videos. But sometimes the challenge is not the words, it is the speed, the accent, or the unfamiliar expressions. So here's one activity for listening practice: shadowing. Have you heard of shadowing? It means you listen to a speaker, like me right now, and you repeat immediately after, almost like an echo. This helps you train your ears and your mouth at the same time. You listen closely. You copy the rhythm, and slowly, you begin to sound more natural. Shadowing is a bridge between listening and speaking. It's like listening and speaking dancing together. Another exercise is mindful listening. Often, we listen, but our minds are not fully there. We are distracted, thinking about other things. But mindful listening means you bring your full attention to the sounds of English. For example, right now, listen not only to my words, but also to my tone, my pauses, and my rhythm. Notice how I slow down when I explain something important, and how I speed up a little when I tell a story. This awareness helps you understand English beyond the words. It helps you understand the feeling. And that skill is essential in public speaking because great speakers use tone, pause, and rhythm to make their message powerful. Listening also improves your confidence. How? Well, imagine this. You are in a conversation, and someone asks you a question. If you didn't listen carefully, you might feel nervous, afraid of answering incorrectly. But if you listened well, you feel confident because you know what they said, and you can respond naturally. Confidence in speaking comes from clarity in listening. The clearer the input, the stronger the output. Now, let me share a short story with you. A student of mine, Maria, was very shy about public speaking. She was afraid of making mistakes in front of people. She studied grammar. She memorized vocabulary. But still, she felt stuck. One day, I suggested that she focus more on listening. She started listening to English podcasts every day, sometimes even repeating after the speakers. Slowly, she noticed something. She began to understand more and more without translating in her head. Then, in class, she gave a short talk. She was nervous at first, but as she spoke, she remembered the rhythm she had heard in podcasts. She copied that rhythm, and suddenly, she felt more fluent. Her classmates clapped, and she realized something important. Listening had given her the courage to speak. This is why I always tell learners, don't skip listening. Listening is your secret power. Listening is the seed, and speaking is the flower. You cannot have the flower without the seed. So, as we move forward in this podcast, we are going to dive deeper into strategies for listening, exercises for public speaking, and ways to combine them into one strong skill. Remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to practice step by step, day by day. The first practical idea I want to share with you is called listening for detail versus listening for gist. When you listen for detail, you focus on every single word. You try to catch each piece of information, almost like collecting little treasures. When you listen for gist, you relax a little and you try to catch the main idea, the big picture. Both are useful. For example, when you are practicing for public speaking, listening for gist helps you notice how speakers structure their talks, where they place emphasis, and how they deliver the main message. Listening for detail, on the other hand, helps you catch vocabulary, phrases, and pronunciation patterns that you can borrow and use in your own speech. So here is a little exercise. Choose a short podcast or a short speech in English. First, listen for gist. Ask yourself, what is the main message? What is the speaker trying to tell me? Then, listen again, but this time for detail. Write down phrases you like. Maybe you notice how the speaker says, "Let me share a story," or "Now let's move on." Those little connecting phrases are gold. They are the bridges in public speaking that make your talk smooth. Collect them, and then try to use them in your own speech. This way, you are not only improving listening, you are building your speaking toolkit. Another powerful practice is listening and repeating with intention. Many learners do repetition without thinking, almost mechanically. But intentional repetition means you listen carefully to how a speaker says something, and you repeat it not only with the same words, but also with the same emotion, the same rise and fall of the voice. For example, imagine a speaker says, "I was so excited to begin my journey." If you repeat the sentence flatly, it doesn't train your speaking skill much. But if you repeat with the same excitement, you are learning how to transfer emotion into your speech. And emotion is what makes public speaking come alive. Asterisk.
Let me tell you a story here. A young man named Daniel once came to me for coaching. He wanted to improve his English speaking for presentations at his university. At first, he spoke clearly but without life. His sentences were correct, but his voice sounded flat, almost robotic. Then I asked him to start listening not only for words but also for feelings. He began listening to TED Talks every day, paying attention to how speakers express joy, sadness, surprise, or passion. Then, he copied those emotions while repeating the same sentences. Slowly, his speaking changed. He was no longer just reciting words, he was communicating feelings. When he gave his next presentation, his classmates told him, "Wow, you sounded confident and inspiring." That transformation happened because listening gave him access to the emotional side of speaking. Now, let's move to another idea: listening with your body. This may sound strange, but stay with me. When we listen, we don't only use our ears. Our whole body is involved. Notice what happens when you listen to music. You might tap your foot, nod your head, or sway a little. The rhythm enters your body. The same can happen with English listening. When you hear a speaker, notice their rhythm, their pauses, and even their breathing. Try to feel it in your body. Then, when you practice public speaking, let that rhythm guide you. This is especially useful for learners at the B1 or B2 level because sometimes you may understand the words, but the rhythm of speech still feels unnatural. Listening with your body helps you internalize that rhythm so your own speaking flows more smoothly. Public speaking is also about clarity, and clarity begins with listening. If you listen carefully to clear speakers, you notice that they don't rush, they don't mumble, they don't overload the audience with long, confusing sentences. They break ideas into smaller pieces. They use pauses. And as a listener, you feel comfortable. You can follow their thoughts. So when you are listening to English content, ask yourself, is this speaker clear? How do they make their message easy to understand? Learn from them. Then when you give your own speech, copy that clarity, because your audience, just like you, will always appreciate a speaker who respects their ears. Let's also talk about the role of silence. Many learners think that silence is awkward, and when they speak, they try to fill every second with words. But great public speakers know that silence is powerful. Where do you learn this? From listening. Listen to great speeches, and notice the pauses. Sometimes a speaker says something important and then stops for 2 seconds. In that pause, the words sink deeper. The audience reflects. Silence is not emptiness, it is meaning. So, when you listen to English, train yourself to notice silence. And when you speak, don't be afraid to use it. Now, I want you to imagine something with me. Picture yourself standing on a small stage. The audience is waiting. You take a deep breath. You begin to speak. But before your words come out, you hear your own voice in your head, echoing the rhythms and tones you have heard in English podcasts, videos, or speeches. You feel calm because you have trained your ears. You know how English sounds, and your mouth naturally follows. That is the power of listening. It prepares you for moments like this. Another listening exercise you can try is called selective listening. Sometimes, instead of trying to understand everything, choose one element to focus on. For example, one day focus only on how the speaker uses intonation. Another day focus only on their connectors, like first, however, in conclusion. Another day, listen only for vocabulary related to emotions. This kind of selective listening sharpens your awareness and makes you a more active learner. Later, when you practice public speaking, you can apply what you have focused on. But let's not forget the emotional side of listening. When you really listen, you don't just understand the language, you feel connected to the speaker. This connection is what audiences feel when they listen to a great public speaker. They don't just hear words, they feel that the speaker cares. So, as a learner, don't treat listening like a test. Treat it like a relationship. Ask yourself, what is this speaker feeling? Why are they telling me this? What is their intention? This deeper level of listening makes you more empathetic, and empathy is the heart of good communication. One more point. Listening is practice for thinking in English. Many learners at the B1 or B2 level still translate in their heads. That's normal, but it slows down speaking. The more you listen, the more you train your brain to process English directly. At first, you may translate, but with time, If you listen daily, you begin to understand without translation. That is when your speaking becomes faster and more natural. Because when you stand up to give a speech, you don't have time to translate each word. You need to think in English. Listening makes that possible. So, my friends, here is your challenge for this week. Choose one English podcast, video, or audiobook, and practice listening every day for at least 10 minutes. Some days, listen for gist. Some days, listen for detail. Some days, do shadowing. Some days, do selective listening. And always, listen with your full attention. Do this consistently, and you will notice your listening improves, your speaking improves, and your confidence grows. Remember, language learning is not a race. It's a journey. Each day you listen, you are moving forward. And every time you listen with focus, you are preparing yourself to stand up and speak with courage. Confidence is something every English learner dreams of. You may know the grammar, you may know the vocabulary, but when you stand in front of people, sometimes your mind goes blank, or your heart beats so fast you can't get the words out. Have you ever felt this? Don't worry, it's normal. But here's the good news. Listening can be your secret weapon to building confidence. Let me explain how. When you listen often to English speakers, your brain becomes familiar with the patterns of the language. The sounds don't surprise you anymore. They become natural. And when something feels natural, you automatically feel more confident using it. Think about when you learned to ride a bicycle. At first, you were scared because it was unfamiliar. But after practicing again and again, the balance became natural. Then you felt confident. The same is true for listening and speaking. The more you listen, the less strange English feels, and the less strange it feels, the more confident you become when speaking publicly. Here's a simple but powerful exercise. It's called confidence echoing. Every day, choose one short speech or video in English where the speaker sounds confident. Maybe it's a TED Talk, maybe a news anchor, maybe a motivational speaker. Listen carefully, then repeat after them. Not just the words, but the tone of confidence. Stand tall, look in the mirror, and echo their confidence. This isn't just language practice, it's performance practice. You are training your body and voice to carry confidence, just like the speaker you are listening to. Another important aspect of confidence is preparation. And preparation comes from listening, too. When you listen regularly to a variety of topics, you build what I like to call a library of ideas. For example, if you often listen to speeches about technology, health, or personal growth, you fill your mind with examples and stories. Later, when you give a public speech, you can draw from this library. You won't feel empty or nervous because you'll have plenty of material ready. So remember, every time you listen, you're not just practicing English, you're collecting ideas for your future speeches. Let's talk about nerves for a moment. Many learners worry. What if I forget what to say? What if my accent is strange? What if people don't understand me? These fears can feel heavy. But listening helps to reduce these fears. Why? Because when you listen to many different English speakers from around the world, you realize that accents are normal. Everyone has an accent, even native speakers. Some speak fast, some speak slow, some pronounce words differently. And yet, they are understood. This realization is powerful. It tells you, if they can speak with their accent and be understood, I can too. Listening broadens your perspective and removes the unrealistic pressure to sound perfect. Once worked with a student named Amina. She was from Morocco and had a strong accent when speaking English. At first, she was very shy about public speaking, but I encouraged her to listen daily to speakers from India, Singapore, and South Africa, all places where English is spoken with unique accents. After a few weeks, she came back and said, "Sara, I finally understand. My accent is not a problem. My voice is unique, and people can still understand me." That change in mindset gave her the courage to speak publicly. And guess what? Her speech was beautiful. Not because she erased her accent, but because she embraced it with confidence.
Now, let's shift to another listening practice that builds public speaking strength: story listening. Public speaking is not just about giving information, it's about telling a story. Stories are what touch people's hearts. And the best way to learn storytelling is by listening to stories. When you listen to podcasts, audiobooks, or speeches, pay special attention to the stories the speaker tells. How do they begin? Maybe with once upon a time, or let me tell you about a moment in my life. How do they build suspense? How do they end with a lesson? Here's a tip: keep a story journal. Every time you listen to an interesting story in English, write a short note about it. It could be as simple as, speaker told a story about failing an exam but learning resilience. Later, when you prepare for your own speech, look at your story journal. You will have dozens of little stories you can use to connect with your audience. Public speaking is also about rhythm, and rhythm comes from listening. Think about great speakers like Martin Luther King Jr. or Barack Obama. When you listen to them, you notice their words have a rhythm, almost like music. They use repetition, pauses, and strong phrases to keep the audience engaged. You can train yourself in this rhythm by listening and repeating. For example, listen to a famous line, pause, and then repeat it with the same rhythm. Do this daily, and your own speeches will start to sound more powerful, more musical, more memorable. Now, let's talk about vocabulary. Many learners ask me, Sara, how can I improve my vocabulary for public speaking? My answer is simple: through listening. But not just passive listening, active vocabulary listening. When you hear a word you like, pause, write it down. Then, notice how the speaker uses it in a sentence. After that, try to use the word in your own speech. For example, if you hear the phrase a turning point, write it down. Later, in your speech, you can say, a turning point in my life was when I moved to a new city. Vocabulary becomes truly yours when you take it from listening and bring it into speaking. Something else happens when you listen a lot. You develop a natural sense of timing. You begin to know when to speak louder, when to slow down, when to pause. These are the hidden skills of public speaking that you cannot learn only from books. They come from the ear. So trust the process. Every minute you spend listening is building your sense of timing for when you speak. Finally, I want to remind you of something very important. Listening is not a passive act. It is an active, creative act. When you listen, you are not just sitting. Quietly, you are shaping your future voice. Every word, every pause, every emotion you hear becomes part of your own speaking style. So, listen with intention, listen with curiosity, and listen with joy. Before we close this part, let me give you one more challenge. This week, find one speech that truly inspires you. Listen to it every day for 7 days. Don't just hear it, study it. Notice the words, the rhythm, the emotion, the pauses. Then, by the end of the week, try to give a mini version of that speech yourself, in your own words. This exercise will not only improve your listening, but also transform your public speaking. Remember, my friends, the journey to becoming a confident public speaker begins with your ears. And every time you listen, you are one step closer to the speaker you want to be. Now, let's imagine a real situation. You are standing in front of a small audience, maybe your classmates, maybe your colleagues at work, maybe even an online group. Your hands feel a little shaky, but you remember the exercises we talked about. You take a deep breath. You remind yourself, I have listened, I have practiced, I am ready. Then you begin. Your words may not be perfect, but they flow with confidence. The audience listens. They nod, they smile. In that moment, you realize something powerful. Communication is not about perfection, it's about connection. And connection starts with listening. When you listen carefully to others, you understand what matters to them. You pick up on their emotions, their values, their interests. Then, when it's your turn to speak, you can connect with them because you are speaking to what they care about. This is the secret of great public speakers. They are great listeners first. So, how do you continue building this listening foundation? Let me give you some structured steps. Step 1, daily listening habit. Choose at least 10 minutes every day to listen actively to English. It could be a podcast, a news report, or a speech. Don't just let it play in the background. Focus fully. Notice the words, the rhythm, the pauses. Write down one thing you learned. Step 2, weekly deep listening. Once a week, choose one longer talk, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Listen to it multiple times. The first time, listen for the overall meaning. The second time, focus on vocabulary. The third time, focus on delivery tone, emotion, and timing. This is how you train your ear to catch more details. Step 3, echo practice. This is something we practiced earlier. Listen to a confident speaker and repeat after them. Not just the words, but the confidence. This exercise may feel strange at first, but it's one of the fastest ways to build your speaking presence. Step 4, story collection. Every week, add one story to your story journal from something you listened to. It could be a funny moment, a personal lesson, or even a story of failure that taught a valuable point. Later, when you speak, you'll have a treasure chest of stories ready. Step 5, public speaking practice. Start small. Record yourself speaking for 2 minutes on your phone. Then listen back. Don't be too critical, just notice what you did well and what you can improve. Over time, increase to 5 minutes, then 10 minutes. If you can, share your speech with a friend or a small group. Remember, speaking is a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. Now, let's talk about mindset. Many learners think, I'll be confident once I'm perfect. But the truth is the opposite. You will become perfect by practicing with confidence. Confidence is not the result, it's the starting point. And listening is the easiest way to borrow confidence from others. When you listen to strong, inspiring voices, a part of their energy becomes yours. It's like standing next to a warm fire. You feel the heat, and you carry it with you. Here's another important truth. Mistakes are part of the process. When you speak, you might forget a word or pronounce something differently. But guess what? Audiences don't remember your mistakes. They remember your message, your emotion, and your courage. Listening helps you see this clearly. If you've ever listened to someone give a speech with small errors, did you laugh at them? Probably not. You admired their effort. The same will be true for you. I want to share one more story. A few years ago, I worked with a student named Diego from Brazil. He loved listening to podcasts in English, but was terrified of speaking. When he finally gave his first speech in English, he forgot half of what he wanted to say. But instead of panicking, he smiled and told a short story about how nervous he felt. The audience laughed gently and encouraged him. That moment changed him. He realized that connection is more powerful than perfection. Today, Diego speaks at international conferences, and do you know what he tells me? Sara, it all started with listening. Listening taught me how people speak, how they laugh, how they connect. Without listening, I could never speak with confidence. So, my dear listeners, if you take one message from today, let it be this: listen with purpose, and your voice will grow. Asterisk now, as we wrap up this long journey together, let's do a small reflection exercise. Close your eyes for a moment if you can. Take a deep breath. Think back to the first time you spoke English in public. Maybe you were shy. Maybe you were scared. Now, imagine yourself in the future standing tall, speaking with confidence, inspiring others. Feel that future version of yourself. That person is already inside you, waiting to come out, and listening will guide you there. Before I say goodbye, Let me leave you with one final challenge. Over the next month, dedicate yourself to this practice. Each week, choose one speech, one story, and one new word from your listening practice. Use them in your own speaking. By the end of the month, you will not only hear the difference, you will feel it. Thank you for walking this journey with me today. Remember, you don't walk alone. Every time you listen, you are learning from voices across the world. And every time you speak, your voice becomes part of that global conversation. This is Sara, your host on Super English Talks. Keep listening, keep practicing, and keep speaking with courage. Until next time, stay confident, stay curious, and never stop growing. Goodbye for now.